Hey everybody, Bonehead for the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Print to Pitch. This is our series where we have a look at everything 3D printed for Blood Bowl, and we're going to be looking at the entirety of the most recent Punga Dwarf team, the Thunderflyers. Okay, so the way Punga drops their teams is they normally come in two parts. They'll release part 1 1 month, part 2 the next month. Oftentimes 2 or 3 months later they'll come back with all the star players and assistant coaches and stuff like that as like an extra release. But in January Punga released the first part of the Thunderflyers, which is a steampunk airship captain style version of a dwarf team for Blood Bowl. And in month 2, which is now, they've dropped the second part. So today I've got the team printed out. We're going to have a look at the STLs. We're going to have a look at the actual models. But first of all, let's have a look and see what you get in both parts of the Thunderflyers. To the pictures. Right, so the first part of the Thunderflyers team. So we're going to go through both parts here. So we're going to assume that you've backed Punga or that you're able to kind of go back and pick them up. Now, I know Punga do have some distributors around on Etsy and eBay and stuff like that. They also have a whole load of illegal distributors, so please just, you know, buy from a licensed reseller. That was one of the interesting things that we went through, is that when we had a license with Punga, we'd put our teams up and someone else without a license would just go and chuck them on there for cheaper, which made it an absolute no-brainer. Anyway, so part 1 of the Thunderflyers team we've got, and this is something that they did quite a good job of. They've got this Death Roller. So the Death Roller is the most exciting part of a Blood Bowl team for Dwarves, right? Hands down. Not the best part on the pitch. I think the most exciting and best part on the pitch is definitely going to be your Troll Slayers, but from a miniature point of view, the Death Roller is pretty wicked. Now, they call this a Steamroller, and the part 1 release, we had the Steamroller or Thunder Roller. It says ×2 versions, and we'll talk through that in a second. 1 Slayer, 1 Blitzer, 2 Runners, 2 and 3 Blockers. So, in part 1, you've got this. Now, it does come in 2 versions, but you've got the barrels on the side, they are fixed. You've got the pilot, that's fixed too. But he's got this big old balloon blimp. Now, you can print it with a grill instead, and we'll look at that in the models, which makes it a lot more achievable as a model. But when you're using like the Charlie Victor prone stunned markers, this is brilliant. And again, we'll have a look at that in a sec because it looks great on the pitch and works beautifully on the square. So you get the Death Roller, and then you get an assortment of players. So the first and most obvious one is the Troll Slayer. So there's 2 Troll Slayers in this release. Part 1 has got 1, part 2 has got the other. Then you've got some linemen and some runners. So that's a lineman, that's a lineman, this is a runner. Now there's 2 runners in this first release, but I've got to be honest with you, there's a 3rd runner in the second release, and the best thing to do is to use the runners that have the cowls, that have the hoods over their head. Otherwise, the positionals can be a little bit challenging to identify. So you've got more linemen on this side, but I believe, we'll have a look when we have a look at the STLs, because it's the only way to be sure, this guy here with goggles is a blitzer. This guy with the, the guy with the glasses is the blitzer. He's got the, no, he doesn't have a face mask. This is the slight problem with this team. It's very obvious what the Death Roller is, and the Troll Slayers don't have the armor, but everybody else kind of blends in. So that's the first part. The second part has dropped, and they've dropped an extra version of the Death Roller, which I've also printed. Now, they've got exactly the same driver, but there's a slightly different body in that this one has arms, where the other one had barrels. Do you know, that means that technically there's 3 different Death Rollers, but they are all the same. If you're going to be printing 2, which you probably aren't, but if you do, mirror it. I didn't mirror it, but same driver in all 3. Now, you've got in this release another Troll Slayer down the bottom here. Obviously a Troll Slayer looks like a sky pirate, which is very cool. Then you've got a whole bunch of linemen and things. This is a blitzer over here. So basically, when it comes to this team, glasses are blitzers, hoods are runners, and everybody else is a very cool, oh no, yeah, that's the other runner. Yeah, good. I was worried for a second that we had too many hoods. Everybody else is basically a lineman. Oh god, the guy's got a hood as well. Oh, what's going on? Right, February release, 6 blockers, 1 slayer, 1 runner, 1 blitzer, 1 steamroller. Okay, so I still don't know which positional is which. What I can tell you is that all these models come pre-supported and not supported, and interestingly, I went back and looked at my file, which we'll look at in a second. I used their pre-supports for the first part. I didn't use their pre-supports for the second part. And do you know what? They were fine. The supports worked great for the first part. I did use the supported version of the Steamroller for this one, but when it comes to the Punga supports, they can be a little bit over the top, and sometimes it can be a bit egregious to take off. For the Chonky Boy, I went with them, but for this release, I did my own supports, and then it was amusing. When I went back to look at the first plate, I'd used their supports, and I don't remember them being a problem, therefore they probably weren't. But that's enough talking about the renders. Let's have a look at the STLs themselves. So let's move my little face down here. Okay, so this on the right hand side was basically the first print that I did. And like I said, I forgot that I used theirs. But when I do the print-to-pitch videos, I will, wherever possible, use the pre-supports, because I want to be able to tell you whether the pre-supports were decent or not. And if we have a bit of a close look, you can see the Punga ones. They are actually really good, but sometimes they can look a little heavy. Particularly, one thing you've got to watch out for when you're looking for pre-supported models, when it comes to Blood Bowl, is the feet. If the feet are just looks like they're standing on a platform of supports, it's probably better to do your own supports, because the problem is that a platform of supports the size of a foot is going to probably give you more grief than the ankle. So when you try and pry them off, you either have to chisel away at the supports at the bottom, or you're going to snap the ankle off, which it happens a lot with pre-supported models. Might have lost one, don't believe I have, but it didn't cause a problem, and it certainly wasn't a problem, most importantly, for the Death Roller, and it is hollowed as well, which is where's the button for hollow? Boop, 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 boop. Which is brilliant, because actually hollow drained really nicely. They've got extra drain holes in the top. So let's talk about the Death Roller first of all. This is the first chassis of the Death Roller, and you've got two plugs. The first plug here in the middle is for the pilot. There's only one pilot, so he's going to go in there, and it fit perfectly both times. This hole on the top for the first version is where the blimp goes, or where this grill goes. Now, I use this grill for the second Death Roller, which comes with arms. So the grill goes on top, and then he's got arms for this one, whereas this one has got the barrels and the blimp on top. So if you've got both weeks worth, you can choose and pick and choose, which is cool. So we've looked at the supports, we've looked at the big Chonky Boy. How long was this print? 4 hours 15 on my Saturn II at 0.04. So yeah, I mean, you know what Chitu Box is like. I'm a big fan of Chitu Box, but it was about 5 hours. 5 hours for a whole Blood Bowl team. That's absolutely fine. I tend to print overnight anyway. Okay, positionals and stuff. We know what the Troll Slayers look like. We've seen them, and they're one of the positionals. They are the only positional that you can look at and go, cool, that is a Troll Slayer. There's less armor, there's an angry face, and the face sculpting on these models is brilliant. Punga have got this really interesting middle of the line sculpting, where if you look at all their models, the armor panels, very plain. There's not a lot of detail, there's a bit of filigree, but the filigree is quite chunky, so actually it's pretty easy to paint, take contrast nicely. And then you've got where they've added the details, they do it in such a way that it just prints brilliantly, it paints brilliantly, and it looks really good too. And there's sculpting style, you've got the big hands, you've got the big heads, you've got the big feet. It works really well for Games Workshop, for Punga, for OPR. That kind of classic heroic scale works brilliantly. So the Troll Slayers, easy to define. This is where it gets interesting. This is technically a runner. This is technically a blitzer. That's a blitzer too. So we've got a couple of runners. This guy's a runner. This guy is a blitzer. So here's where it gets a little bit confusing. And my advice, this guy is also a runner. We've got several runners. Now, he is the quintessential runner from the first release. He's got the goggles and he's got the hood. This guy, a second hooded guy, it looks very close to being mirrored. In fact, shall we do the test? Boop. Are you mirrored, my friend? Similar. similar in places. That's cool. That's interesting. That's interesting. So it's been mirrored with a little bit of a scale, with a bit of a sculpt check. And you've got this guy who's labeled a runner, who's got the goggles. I would say that guy looks more like a lineman. So let's get him gone and use the two hooded guys for runners. One of them's carrying the ball. One of them isn't carrying the ball. And that at least means that the guys with hoods you can identify easily as the runners. Now, when it comes to the blitzers, technically, they're these two here. And when you look at some of the line people, they're a kind of a mix. You've got female, male, dwarves, works really cool. Good little bit of variety. The only one that confuses me a little bit is this one here because they've got a ball. Dwarf lineman, Edge 4+. How often are they going to have the ball? And Blood Bowl, the ball, if the model has the ball, they are almost, without fail, a thrower / runner or a catcher. Like, you don't often get catchers with the ball. I think maybe we've got an elf catcher with the ball, but throwers tend to have the ball on them. So that one is a bit dubious for me. Bye, Felicia. All right, these are your blitzers, however, and you've got the glasses. So the guys with sunglasses are blitzers. The guys with hoods are your runners. Everybody else, well, the troll slayers are obviously the troll slayers, and everybody else can just be a lineman. When you're making this team, when you're printing this team, when you're painting this team, I would recommend just giving them a nice coloured splash on the glasses or a different coloured shoulder pad or something just to call them out. Because what Punga have done here is produce a whole bunch of really cool sculpts, but they're all kind of individual, so there's not really a copied aesthetic. So the two blitzers we got here, they've got sunglasses. One's got a beard, one's got the face mask over. If they both had the face mask over, I think you'd have less of a problem. But using the two runners with the hoods, that's going to help you out. And the blitzers, you're probably going to do an extra little bit of painting. I guess they've got the fur coats, actually. They've got the bomber-style jackets. So you are going to have a little bit there that kind of ties them together. But I don't know if it's enough. And when you're playing Blood Bowl, not only do you want to be very clear on what your positionals are, it's very, very good form to make sure your opponent knows what's going on as well. Anyway, let's have a look at the prints. Okay, with that said, let's have a look at some of the sculpts. So, like I already said, printed these on my Saturn 2 0.04, and I used Elegoo 2 resin, which is basically the resin I always use. It's pretty tough, it says, but you can bend. There's a bit of flexibility to these pieces, which I think works really well. So, we are going to have a look at the players that I have defined as linemen, and we've got a couple of the blitzers and one of the runners there as well with the troll slayers and a couple of the big fly boys. Right, this button. That might be a little bit aggressive with the zoom, Ben. So let's zoom that right back out. Okay, so we've got this guy here who technically I think we said is a runner, but I intend to use him as a lineman. He's got the same armor. Yeah, he's got a bit of goggle action, but that's fine. So you can see, first things first, I think this is from the first batch. So I pre-supported it myself, which is why you've got some little dodgy support bits here. I've not cleaned them up very well. And in fact, I've not primed them after the debacle was the last situation that gave me with spot priming because it's been cold. So he is technically a runner, but we're going to use him as a lineman. This is wicked though, and you can see some really great sculpting already. You can see there, let's zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because you can see a little bit of layer line, but only slightly on the shoulder pads. I think this is from part 2 release, and you can see there's a ton of great details that are going to be picked up with some very easy painting. So you've got solid armor, you've got a little bit of the carry through with like you've got the wrench there that works nicely for him. So when it comes to theme, it's good. When it comes to scheme, it's good. Okay, here we got one of the female linemen. This is the one, the criminal with the ball, the dwarf lineman with the ball. But look, you can see the detail on the face there, even with my slightly out of focus camera with on pure unprimed resin. Look, that is why I didn't bother priming, because it seemed wildly unnecessary, because you can actually see what's going on here without any of the effort that I need to show this off. So that for me is a really good sculpt. these are just going to paint themselves. So scale wise, this is a challenging one for me because I don't actually have any dwarf models from Games Workshop. That's not fair. I have no idea where they are. The dwarves that we're using at the moment, I've got my FANAF team, and the Chorf team is Punga, so that's of no good. But I have always got the quintessential scale models here from Games Workshop. So first one up, we've got the Strength 2 Goblin against the Strength 3 Female Dwarf. There you go. Boop. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Be gone, resin debris. So you can see scale-wise, yeah, all right. Are they bigger than a size 2? They're bigger than a size 2. The smaller of the linemen is bigger than a size 2. If we take one of the other linemen, we do the overhead shot, and you can see, actually, yeah, bang on spot. Let's take a size 4. The Black Orc wildly outsizes the Dwarf, but the Dwarf doesn't look bad. When I printed these, they felt a little small. They did feel a little small, but I tend to upscale stuff because it looks better on camera and is a lot easier to paint. But I don't think you need to worry about it. That's a really cool thing to be able to say, is that Punga here, the pre-sups are good, the scale is good, you're good to go with these, and it's just really nice. So those are your linemen. Then we've got a couple of Slayers of Trolls. So which one have we seen already? I think we've seen this one. Boop. Camera zoom. There we go. Thank you very much. I might be able to just get a better shot if we go in. Oh, that'll do. Donkey, that'll do. Right, there we go. So here is one of your Troll Slayers, and I think it's the first one we looked at. You can tell he's a Troll Slayer because he looks like a Troll Slayer. He's got less armor, he's got a vest. No, he hasn't even got a vest. He's just wearing his dungarees, but he's got the troll beard, and more importantly, he's got the troll mohawk. The supports on this one make me think that I supported him, and the supports on this one make me think that I don't really know, actually, to be honest with you. I may have supported these, I may not have supported these, but when it comes to quality, it doesn't really matter, because actually the detail there, look, has been presented very, very, very nicely. Scale wise, is he bigger than a goblin? Let's zoom out a little because I think it's appropriate. Yeah, he's bigger than a goblin. You're going to be painting out like a Troll Slayer. The more I look at these models, the more I think, okay, they're probably fine. If I was going to be running this team in the channel, I would scale them up 5 or 10%. The supports would probably take it as well. Most supports are good between sort of 90 and 110, 115%. If you're going to upscale or downscale significantly, though, you need to do your own supports, but Chitubox pre-sup auto support is pretty good these days. The other Troll Slayer there, again, a lot of detail, and these models will be very easy to paint up in not a lot of time with some pretty easy contrasting. So I'm sold on that as well. I've only got the one runner, apart from technically the other runner who doesn't have the hood, and this is like the poster boy of the team. He's got the goggles, he's got the hood, he's got the ball. He is the guy that you know is the runner. He's got the sneaky running pose, and he's a thunder flyer, so he's got some tools kicking around as well. Yeah, sculpt is good. Let's bring the scale up. Is he smaller than a Black Orc? Yes. Is he bigger than a goblin? Yes. Over the top shot. Scale looks good. Sunshine is out, which is peculiar in England. Right. We will get to the very exciting models in a moment, I promise. But you've got to do the blitzers. So these are the two sunglasses guys. These are the two blitzers for the team. And again, they've come out really, really, really nicely. And you can see the bomber jackets here, which I don't think is enough to differentiate them. Let's grab a lineman. Let's grab a lineman here. Right, here, this is what we're looking at. You've got bomber jackets with the fur lining, and you've got a lineman there. I don't think that's enough to differentiate them. The mask is okay, but where they've got a mask is odd. The blitzers almost look smaller than the linemen. So when it comes to this team, if I was doing it, I would be using these guys as my blitzers, but I would probably scale up the blitzers just so they looked more imposing. Because with the armored head here, this guy just looks smaller than the lineman. Not a big issue, and it's due to his sort of crouching tiger hidden dwarf pose, but I mean, I would consider it, but I'd consider it for the whole team. Now, One model that absolutely positively does not need scaling up is this boy here, because we're going to have to go, and that's the wrong way, isn't it? We're going to have to actually zoom out with the camera to get this model in. And then we wait for autofocus. So the way this model prints is you get the body here and you get the pilot and the top bit separate. They've in month 2, they've dropped a slightly different body with, instead of having the barrels, they've got these little mechanical arms instead. Same top grill bit. So you could technically put the blimp on the arms guy and just have one super gyro mech thing, which is pretty cool. Exactly the same pilots, exactly the same chassis, exactly the same debris on the base. So it just gives you basically 3 different options, because you can have barrels with grill, barrels with blimp, and blimp with arms. So that's very, very, very cool. It works. And the most important thing is, even though this is massive, so if we do the is it bigger than a test, unsurprisingly, he's bigger than a Black Orc. Right, but they've done a very good job here. This is a 40mm base because he's a big guy and it should be on 40mm bases. You know who you are. Blimp over a 40mm. This is excellent. This is something that I know Brute Fun and other sculptors have been working on quite a lot, is to keep the profile within 40mm. If you can keep the profile, the kind of cylinder within 40mm, it'll fit on a Blood Bowl pitch and you won't have any problems. It's the ones where you kind of got all the tentacles and the tails and everything just kind of slipping on the outside that causes a problem. So even though this model is gigantic, in fact it is the size of a tea mug, which I'm a fan of, and he's significantly bigger than a Black Orc, it works great with the team. And if you look at the scaling is also perfect with the team as well. So I like this. I do like this. I like that you get to kind of choose whether you want the shorter version with the arms, which actually lines up. But still, he's obviously a big guy, which, yeah, that's a very, very, very cool model kit. All right, there you have it, the Thunder Flyers, with a variety of death rollers and a bunch of dwarves that look very different but also very much the same. Aesthetic wise, they've got goggles and some wrenches, but otherwise they're actually not too steampunk. Sure, they've got a blimp, which definitely ups the steampunk airshippery quite significantly, but the rest of them, like the Troll Slayers, just look like Troll Slayers. The thrower dwarf, who is a lineman, has got a bionic eye. That's probably about as much as it goes. So they sit in with the fantasy element quite nicely. The only 2 models that really stick out are the Blitzers, because they've got the pilot coats, they've got their hood bit. But I don't think that's really that bad. So it's a cool alternate team with a slight bit of theme and a pair of wicked death rollers. The fact that the models all look a little bit similar is, do you know what? Do you know what? I think it's fine. There are loads of teams with 16 individual players. In fact, when we looked at the Succubus Elf team last month, we were like, are you the Blitzer? It's Blood Bowl. There's not a huge amount of variation on the positionals on the pitch unless you're playing something like Renegades. Just make sure your opponent and you can clearly see what the models are. You can basically use whatever you like. As far as this team goes, it is good. I'm not sold that it's significantly better than the Stern Boys one, their pirate themed team, but if you don't like pirates but you like airship pirates, then this is definitely an upgrade. I like the team, the STLs are great, the pre-subs work, the scale is good to go, you get good marks for that, and they're Punga. Milton showed what you can do with a Punga team with the Nurgle team that we've just seen on 7 Super Series. The Punga models paint themselves. So good stuff there. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy printing.